All right, it's a time to talk. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, choir, especially for that wonderful anthem. You'll notice that the music is a little different in the next couple weeks. We're entering into our worship series that we're calling Eras, where we're looking at the decades, starting at the 60s and going up to the 2000s, the most important decade. But we'll be listening to some of the music that was inspired during these times, and I'm overjoyed that we get to listen to Turn, Turn, Turn this morning. We'll have some more music from the 60s as well throughout our service today. The 60s were a strange time. I was not alive during them, so they couldn't have been that great. But as I read about the 60s, they are often called the countercultural generation. You had a lot of social upheaval from what I've read about. There's the Vietnam War. The Civil Rights Movement is in full effect. The Beatles break onto the scene and change popular music forever. The nation is shocked by the assassinations of President JFK and Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. We are engaged in this Cold War that doesn't seem that cold for the people fighting in it, and we seem to have lots of conflict with other countries, some of which result in some really cool things, like the first man walking on the moon. It was a time of great change, and this span of 10 years ends with President Nixon, who I stopped reading at the end of the 60s chapter in my history book, and I'm sure that he has no conflict or chaos taking us into the 70s. I'm sure it's all just smooth sailing from there. Our anthem this morning, Turn, 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 from I think one of the most underrated bands of the decades, the Byrds, is inspired by our text this morning from Ecclesiastes 3:1-15. Have any of you read Ecclesiastes recently? Maybe some of our Bible in a Year folks are nodding, remembering, going through it. Ecclesiastes is a strange book in the Bible. They're all kind of strange, but it sticks out a little bit that it almost wasn't included in the canon of the Hebrew Bible because early Jewish scholars and leaders, to not put too much of a scholastic spin on it, thought it was kind of a bummer. The author of Ecclesiastes, who we often think is King David, seems to have kind of a pessimistic streak running throughout this book, and we get some really beautiful sections of it in our reading today, but a lot of Ecclesiastes can kind of be boiled down to say that it's pretty vain to try to wonder about why things happen. It's the vanity of vanities to try to answer the questions that we have about how the universe works and how God works within it. And so, really, you shouldn't try, because you're going to die one day and you're never going to get that answer. So, in the meantime, have a good time as best you can. Have joy with the people that are around you. Look for the good in the world, because there's so much good in the world, even through these seasons that we read about, a season to mourn, a season to fight, a season to kill. There are the flip side. There's the good seasons as well, seasons for peace, seasons to seek, seasons to sow together, seasons to laugh, seasons to dance. There's all these great things. And that's some of the beauty of Ecclesiastes. The bad isn't always far behind in Ecclesiastes. He's always right there to tell you, and you should do this because you're going to die. And so people have argued about this book, and it's an interesting one. An interesting one for sure. I think that this text, this song applies a lot to the 60s. Like we said, it's that countercultural, a lot of chaos in the air. It seems to be different seasons for lots of folks. For the people fighting for civil rights, it is a time to fight. For the people who went to war, it was a time to fight. For the people who watched those wars at home, it was a time to mourn. For the people who came home from those wars, it was a time to mourn. A lot has been written about how our veterans from the Vietnam War did not receive the hero's welcome that was expected of veterans in the 60s. Suddenly, they were met with voices that challenged what they did around the world. Americans, for the first time, had TVs in their homes. They were able to see what was happening in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. We were becoming more and more connected during the 60s in a lot of ways. And as we were becoming more connected, as we were given glimpses into each other's lives, we also found a lot more division. At least that's what I read about. A lot of division. A lot of fighting. A lot of people at each other's throats. A lot of people shouting at one another. A lot of people harming one another. That's what I read a lot about. And then we gathered together in Sunday school this morning to talk about the 60s, and we talked about how it didn't really, for folks who lived through it, it didn't always seem like the end of the world as we sometimes read about in history books. These moments that are these massive historical moments, these turning points for us as a people, sometimes took days for other people in the country to hear about. Maybe it didn't impact our lives right away. We had this sense of connection, this growing division that we were able to see through our TVs that capitalized our time, but it didn't always feel like that in the lives of the everyday people in the 60s. We talk a lot about division today. I live today, so I can talk about it a little bit more than the 60s. When you turn your TV on, we're more connected than ever. When you turn your phone on, we're more connected than ever. And through all of that connection, there are voices driving us towards division. At least that's what I read a lot about. And sometimes I scroll on my phone or I watch TV and it seems like there's no good news happening and I have to just turn it off because all the news is bad, and I have to physically pick myself up and go outside and make sure that the world is still there because the voice is telling me that there's so much conflict, there's so much division, there's so much pain and fighting and hatred, and we'll never get through this. Those voices are so loud and suddenly they're gone, and I walk outside and what I hear instead is the "Good morning" from my neighbor walking down the street. There's a mockingbird in the tree in my backyard that sings a different song every day. And every day, that song seems to me to be a little more beautiful than the one the day before. I go to the Brahms down the street, and there are old men having breakfast and reading newspapers, which, again, I live today. I didn't know we were still printing them, but we are. People are still reading them and talking about what's in them. I go to the store and there are children making noise like children do. They're reaching for things on the aisles as children do, and their parents are scrambling to get them. And I'm talking about myself again. We're trying to keep our children in the baskets, and as people round the corner and see this, and I love this, they give our children a stern look that says, "Listen to your parents." And as they walk by, they tell those parents, "You're doing great." As they walk by, they tell those parents, "Your children are beautiful." When I take my headphones out in the store, I hear people complimenting one another in the aisles of the stores. A few months ago, we were at the Dream Park in the Trinity River area of Fort Worth. There's this massive park with all kinds of stuff for children of all ages. And the voices on my phone and on the TV and on the radio had talked about how we are more divided than ever. We are at each other's throats. We're in another season of cultural upheaval in the 2020s. And as our kids ran around with hundreds of other children, I looked around and there were dozens of languages being spoken. There were kids not able to understand what one another were saying, pushing each other on the swing, making space for one another to go down the slide, playing on those super cool little zip line things, making sure that everyone's super safe. And I had to look around and think, this is the real world. It doesn't seem like it's ending. If anything, it seems like it's blooming right in front of us. And when we turn the voices on our TVs down, when we turn the voices on the phones and the radio and the Facebook programs and the YouTube shows and the podcasts that tell us that everything is bad, when we turn it down and we go outside and we see our neighbor face to face, at least to me, it doesn't seem like the world is ending. When you read other accounts of the 60s, you don't have to dig too deep to find people that talk about the good things that happened. There was division, there was conflict, there were, fights for equal rights, and in those fights, one another, the children of God were linking arms to carry one another into a better life. There was division, there was conflict, but it was pushing us towards a time of love. We had these seasons that we tried to paint these decades with a broad brush and say, this was the season of counterculture. This was the season of social upheaval and change. But in each of the people's lives living in these decades, they ran through hundreds of seasons. Seasons of love, seasons of joy, seasons where it was time to dance, a time where it was to laugh. I'm going to tell you to do something that might sound a little strange coming from the voice that's talking to you, but I'm going to ask you to tune out the voices. If you need to close your eyes to do it, feel free. Think about all the voices that you hear during your day that aren't from the people physically present with you. Turn them off. Tune them out. Listen to the person breathing beside you. Listen to the person reaching over as you drive to hold your hand from the passenger seat. Listen to the little voices asking a million questions from the back seat. Listen to the voices of children as they run down the hallway to our dinner after service. Listen to the voices of those people that you have known for years or those people that you have just met. Listen to the sound of silence in God's creation. Listen for the sound of God's still small voice. What is that voice telling you? What is your own voice telling you? What season are you in? Where is that voice directing you to go? Is this your time to fight? Is it your time to make peace? Is it your time to reap or sow, a time to seek, or a time to lose? Is this your time to mourn or your time to dance? God has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, God has put a sense of past and future into our minds. Yet they cannot find what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for us than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we live. Whatever season you are in, whatever time you are in your life, be in it. And know that you are not alone. If it's a season that you've been in for some time and you feel like you're running your wheels and you need to get out of it, let this be your invitation to come out of it. There are new seasons to live, and there are children of God around you to live in those seasons with you, to help you through your time of mourning, to bring you into a time of love and joy and care and dancing. And even in those times of silence and quiet, when we tune all the other voices out, even in those times where you find yourself feeling alone, your Creator is with you there too. The one who made you and stamped you with His image and called you good. Whatever time you are in, be there and know that God is there too. Thanks be to God. Amen.